Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. We are presented by SPI Logistics, and I am your host, Blythe Brumleve. And today on the show, we got somebody that I have been wanting to get on the show for a very long time. He has been a post-it on my desk for a long time to reach out to, so we're finally making that happen, and that is Ryan Rogers. He's the founder and CEO of TextLocate, and we're going to be talking about tracking where the heck is my freight. So Ryan, welcome into the show.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad I made the Post-it note because it's funny. I've been in the industry like 24 years and I still use Post-it notes. I've got them like all over my
Same.
screen and it's extremely effective. And then I've got notes in my phone and everything else. But the Post-its is like, and I like to check things off. So it's like, got that one done, wad it up, throw it away. So
It's
I
such a
love it.
sense of accomplishment when you can mark
It
something off the
is.
Post-it and then throw the Post-it away.
I
It's
know.
not that many people get that, but I can tell this interview is already off to a good start. Now, I was listening to, a couple of your interviews that you've done in the past. Thomas Watson's with Watson, I should say, with Loaded and Rolling, which was really a great interview. And you mentioned during that interview that you had, because I didn't know, I thought that you had just started TextLocate, but you've actually been in the industry for, a lot longer than that. So give us a sense of your career background.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry 24 years, and my hair, I say, is a little bit older than me, but the gray hair. But yeah, I grew up here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm right down from Freight Waves. Know Craig well, worked together in business in the past, but started in the industry at U.S. Express, fresh out of school, doing analytics and KPIs and stuff. Finance degree here locally at UTC in Chattanooga, and started there in 1999, and didn't know I would be in the industry. Ended up staying in, great opportunity at U.S. Express. Kind of came up as a finance individual and was treasurer for the company, and then transitioned into operations and got into freight brokerage and managing that team. And then after that, spent some time at Amazon on the procurement side for the middle mile space, working with large trucking companies on securing freight during obviously some big growth times, and then transition as chief of transformation officer at Covenant, led tech, M&A, innovation, and then managed a brokerage there. And then 2020, during COVID years, things changed structurally there. So I kind of transitioned out, and I had this idea. It took me a few months to think about how I wanted to present it, and could it work? And I've got some young tech partners that developed the tool, and I said, okay, here's what we'll do. If you guys will finish it up and let's get the MVP, I'll give it 6 months, and I'll just, as hard as I can, we'll see if the market need is there. And luckily we signed up our first two customers in the first month. And it came from just old school, making phone calls, calling people in the industry, people you didn't know, connecting with anybody you could to tell the story about what we were trying to accomplish. And we kind of started on the location side and then transitioned now into full collaboration, just make it easier to have communication, interaction with drivers day to day.
And for folks who may not be aware of what TextLocate does, give us a sense of how that product works.
Yeah, so TextLocate, first, you can find a lot of information just at textlocate.com. We've got demo videos, everything there. But the goal was to not displace apps in the market, but certain drivers don't want to use an app. They don't like to register. They don't want to be constantly tracked. So TextLocate came to market. We brought it to market where we send actually a message via text. They can click on that link and provide a one-time location update. So it initially started as a digital check call, and we still obviously have that. And then we've rolled out two-way interaction. We've got a full dashboard that you can connect in and have conversations. So imagine kind of like Slack for drivers. You can interact. So you're communicating from your computer. They're receiving it on their phone. Again, all text, no registration process, image capture. We have a full API, so you can actually connect it to your system and do all those things automatic. And we're working on integrations with TMS. We have direct integration with customers that have their own custom systems. We're in 5 of the top 10 in the country in 3PL. And then all the way down to, we have a lot of great customers that have like 3 people, and they have a vision, and they can, instead of using your personal phone, you can have everything kind of tied into our system, and you see all the history, conversations with drivers, and everything is driven off the load number. And we're also only in logistics. So we're just trying to be very focused with what we're doing. So everything we get up and think about every day about how to innovate and be more creative to make it easier for drivers, because been in the industry so long with drivers, I know it's tough. It's a tough job. And what we're trying to do is how do we bring more transparency and communication and collaboration with drivers to make it super easy, very effective, provide an easy way for them to be able to interact and get information up to date. That's the goal, to try to make their life easier, whether that's updating schedule information so that they've got the best information, whatever makes it simple for them.
Now, when I worked at an asset-based 3PL about a decade ago, and we had an entire department dedicated to just tracking. Does
Yeah.
that still exist in sort of a modern day brokerage, or does your solution sort of, help that same department that still exists? I guess give us sort of a historical concept of what, tracking or check calls used to be, and then how TextLocate fits into that.
Yeah, so it's evolved. So what you're saying still exists. There's still a lot of track and trace teams out there. Some of them are integrated with customer side or carrier side or whatever it may be. And in the past, like when I go way back, it was funny. I was just on a call talking about this. When I go way back into when I first started, drivers enjoyed you calling them, and a lot of, I mean, I'm not too old. I'm 47, so I'm not that old, but I've been in this long enough to see the transition. Drivers didn't have as many cell phones, and you also had to pay by the minute. And then they have 800 number like cards, and you would call them or leave messages for them. But when cell phones really started growing faster, drivers liked for you to call them. And, text wasn't there, so they, enjoy because they're not talking to anybody. Now that's changed dramatically, where text is like a pointed conversation. So you can just text, ask that question, just like you and I probably get way more text than we do phone calls a day. And drivers like that because now they're on those smart devices. So they don't need us to have conversation. They're having conversation with, their family and loved ones, whether that be, all the avenues, whether that's text, FaceTime, Snapchat, Instagram, they're doing all those kind of things now. So those departments have evolved and changed. There's a lot of it is still, there's a still big portion of drivers that aren't constantly tracking with the apps. So a lot of your brokers out there still have big track and trace teams. And so we're not there to displace it. I call it like a superpower. We make it easier. It's kind of like email. Email didn't, it changed the speed of things, but we still have people working emails. And so we're doing it all via text, so they can use our product to get information faster and quicker. You can manage like workflow processes and stuff. So if I had 10 drivers to make calls to, I'm gonna go down the list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some will answer, some won't. Then I got to go back through and go, okay, which ones didn't answer? And then I'm already to the bottom list. I don't know when my phone call will be the right time for the driver, because we forget drivers aren't operating the 8 to 5 routine. They're operating, who knows, they may be 8 to 5 today. They may be 5 to 12 tomorrow. Who knows when they're sleeping, resting. So it makes it complicated. So we've kind of eased that with this tool. Really complements your track and trace department or your carrier team. Now we do have automation opportunities where it can do it for them and tee it up. So the idea is that superpower for that logistics professional. And again, trying to get, whether that, like we say, we go beyond the blue dot. So it's not just location, it's the communication. How are you doing? What's going on? Do you need anything from us? Things like that. And that's, again, trying to continue to improve service. Because I always say with check calls, the reality is the check call process, we're just trying to get through the good ones real quick as fast as we can, because those are all like thumbs up. Hey, everything's going really well. We want to get to the ones that need problem resolution. So how do we get to the ones that have problem resolution? How do we get there faster? And that's what our product helps them do, so that you have somebody that's making check calls in that role, that they can transition and become more proactive than reactive, so they can get there faster.
I love that you brought it up that the drivers don't work the traditional 8 to 5, because I didn't even think about it recently. I was trying to coordinate with a truck driver to get them on the show, and they were like, sorry, I can't, schedule something out in advance because I don't know what my route is going to be. And I didn't even think about it from their perspective. Like, sorry, I can't schedule an interview because I don't know if I'm going to actually have Wi-Fi. I don't know if I'm going to have cell
Yeah.
service in order to have these conversations. So with that caveat, I imagine that, from the driver lens, that they are already frustrated because of the lack of ability to communicate regularly, but also with the influx of tracking apps and tools and things that are almost invading their privacy. How do you, I would imagine that TextLocate is just their preferred choice over any other mechanism because they can communicate in their own time and they don't have to worry about the privacy aspect. Is that a safe assumption?
It is, and they do like that. Some are very comfortable with the apps in those situations. And again, we don't really replace the apps; we actually complement with them. But yeah, there's a lot of drivers that you want to have that flexibility because no different than us as far as like if I got the same phone calls today that I get text messages, I would spend all day just trying to answer those and respond. Whereas with text, I can if you send me a text and we're on the show, well, in an hour or 30 minutes when we're off, I can respond back. And it's the same way with the drivers. Also, safety is a big concern. You know, we put a disclaimer: be safe, don't text and drive. Things like that, because we want them to be responsible with the actual products, and they have the ability. They know who's asking the question. They know what's happening. We think a phone call is more feels more urgent and interrupts their time. It's like if I don't take that call, was it another call? Car warranty call, or is it really the broker with a question, or is there a change in the schedule that I'm going to miss? And then it's the urgency. Hey, I've got to grab my phone. And years ago, when headsets first came out, I'm on my AirPods, but when they first came out, you would notice that a lot more drivers had their headsets in. But this past in April, we kind of just there was a handful of us. It was easier to drive to TIA from Chattanooga, so we just did a little road trip. And most of the drivers now aren't wearing headsets anymore, so they're doing like voice to text and things like that because the phone call seems to be a little more interruptive of their day than we would think of in the past. But there is a sense of, hey, I'm not constantly being tracked that they like because what a lot of times if you talk to truck drivers, they'll say, I'm a professional driver. If I need to be from, we're in Chattanooga, say I need to be from Chattanooga to Dallas, I'm fine with giving you updates. I don't necessarily have to be tracked every 15 minutes, but I'll give you updates along the way. I'll let you know if I'm running late or something happens that's going to throw me off from my delivery appointment. That's how a lot of drivers do feel, and that's why a lot of them really enjoy our product.
And as you were talking, I was just starting to try to think about the fact that it's really wild that for in today's age that I can open up the shop app on my phone and be able to track a shipment from across the world at the exact location and know every step of that transit process. But the fact that that doesn't really exist in freight, is there a reason why that doesn't exist on something that is, I guess, so much more valuable than maybe like a dress that I'm getting from overseas? Like, how does that, I guess, the tracking component, how is it needed in freight versus like other industries where it's easily provided?
I think some of that's estimates that you see, and then I think some of it's like checkpoints. It kind of went in and got scanned, whereas necessary with our freight, it's kind of going point to point, halfway across the country. It's not stopping along the way to get quote scanned from the next place. And we also are in a very fragmented industry. So I think the average truck count right now is like six or something like that.
Hmm.
6 or 8 trucks is the average size. So you're still dealing with a lot of fragmented systems, all different personalities. It's very hands-on. It's human driven. It's not machine generated. So that's what makes it still a little bit of a challenge. Is that it's very fragmented is a big piece of it. And you don't, like I said, you don't have checkpoints to scan the next truck where they're at or the
And so
next
that's
package.
they're just, it's like the Domino's pizza app. Like once I found
Yeah,
out that that was fraudulent, like I just don't order from Domino's anymore because I like getting the pizza tracker. So now I know, some of those clothing shipments are probably lying to me and letting me know
they
from
they're probably checkpoints is kind of how they do it, and
no,
maybe
but
some
I
estimates.
that makes a ton of sense. I guess I just assumed that there was some kind of scanning technology on a license plate or something, and then it would tie to, the some kind of like mass surveillance system, and it just plugs into a system, and we don't even know. But
Maybe
as you
one day.
mentioned, the
Yeah.
silos that exist in this industry, do you think the silos are exacerbated because of technology, or are they becoming less of a silo because of technology?
I think if you look back, again, been in the industry for quite a while, so 20 plus years, the amount of tech and tech spend coming into our industry has increased dramatically. So I think those things and the desire and seeing how big of a opportunity is in logistics, I think it's helping it. It's definitely making it easier. Like for example, more drivers enjoy using the apps than they did yesterday. We think that market will continue to grow, and our market share may shrink as far as a percentage, but there's still a lot of volume to be had there. So I do think that technology will make it easier. It's just a matter of connecting all the dots.
And
That's
so
the tough
when
part.
so say I'm a new company and I'm struggling with tracking and tracing. It's a major like frustration point for my employees internally.
Yeah.
What does that look like to give you a call and say, hey, I think we're ready to move forward with your service? What does that onboarding process look like?
It's very simple. We have a dashboard. So if you're a smaller company, we have a lot of startups that have chosen us, to kind of get started, because it's not just the track and trace; it's also the full collaboration with the driver. So instead of saying, "Hey," and this has changed a lot, that a lot of young people don't want to text from their personal phones. They don't want to do things. You can do all that via our tool. So instead of having to buy, company pay, issued phones, they can do everything via their web browser on their phone or on the laptop, and so they can interact. And it's not just the location, but it's tracking by the load, and it's also so if you and I are covering freight together, let's say, or have our own business together, well, you're not going to know what's being said on my phone, and I'm not going to know what's on your phone. But if you use TextLocate, you'll see all that together: the location, the updates as far as like any kind of communication back and forth, images for like things like, it could be pictures of trucks, pictures of freight, PODs, any of those kind of things. You can see all that collectively together. So it's kind of like we're not trying to be a TMS at all. We're that communication layer where you can have visibility. So the sign up process with us is super easy. You can go online. You can actually self sign up,
Hmm.
just like any product. You go online, you log in, you set up a free account, and then you choose the plan you want. And then, of course, we do demos all the time where you can set up and have a conversation, 20-minute demo, and we can get you going. And then we have a full onboarding team. So we've actually got 2 people dedicated full time for onboarding, follow up, training. We have training manuals, all those pieces all set up and ready to go. Former freight brokers, we understand the issues there. Customer service is extremely important for us and from our perspective.
And so I guess how are you is the product always kind of done since it's SMS technology? You did mention a couple of other features. It's almost like the Slack of text messaging, and it kind of sounds almost like a CRM for your drivers as well. Is it kind of like an all-in-one solution, or is the product kind of built and now it's just kind of the job for you and the team to sell it?
We're always constantly growing, so we definitely have the product built, but we're rolling out new features and new functionality. We do things like text-based bidding. There's all different things that we're rolling out new features for. That we're rolling out new products. It's all cloud-driven, so every time we update it, everybody gets it. So we're rolling things out every few weeks. So there's still more to build and more opportunity there with things that we've done like status updates and things like that. So there's still a whole lot more room to build and grow. Um, there's just so many ideas that text-based messaging can really help. And again, tee it up for your day. It's not to replace the person. It's to follow up and have conversational activities with drivers that make it simple. And then all that is housed in one thing. So it is one kind of full collaboration product that you can say, hey, I can have. Except we don't do phone calls, so you can do all of your messaging and all those pieces there. And then there would be drivers that sometimes you just have to call. And that's somebody you have to follow up and do that. And then there'll be X number of drivers that you can try really hard, and from my past experience, won't answer the phone calls. That happens too. But the
Right.
freight will show up and deliver on time. They just don't. They just prefer not to have conversations with people. They just want to do their job and do a good job and get it delivered.
Yeah, it's interesting that I read a lot of the driver subreddits, and they basically, that's a common theme. Like, I don't want to talk to anybody. Like, I took this job, so I didn't have
Yeah.
to talk to anybody. And so it sounds like, that's you're listening to them and then offering up a solution specifically for them. So from the how, I guess, from a development standpoint, how are you, I guess, prioritizing what to create and what maybe not what to create? Give us a little bit of a sense of like where you prioritize and maybe how you get some customer and driver feedback on the product.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it, and a good way to ask it, because that is important. When we originally launched TextLocate, we started with an MVP. We didn't go out and build. We're fully bootstrapped, built the business ourselves, and we didn't go out and say, okay, we want to build this huge product that does this, this, and this. What we want to do is bring an MVP product to market that worked, and then we prioritize based on customer request. We do have, I would say, if I was guessing, probably 85% of what we do is customer request. 15 to 20 roughly is where we kind of have these innovative ideas, and we're like, okay, what if we could do this? And it maybe the customer hasn't asked yet for that, but there's other ways and other things in the market that we can kind of make it a little more simplified. We try to do that, but we do prioritize that. We put tickets in, and we prioritize based on customers' requests, that they'll give feedback like, can you do this? Can you do that? Or they have full flexibility with our API to connect, and we give it, it's very open. It's not our way, it's your way. However you want to structure it, you can do that flexibility with the connectivity with APIs.
Are you texting them using TextLocate to get their feedback?
Oh yeah, we do actually, and a lot
That's
of times,
awesome.
and on our demos, we do live demos. We're not PowerPoint kind of people. We actually go in, we actually send them, and we simulate having a conversation with the driver. We even do some follow ups with, hey, what are you thinking about next on the product and stuff, using via text. That's what we do.
That's awesome. I love the direct feedback loop and just making the product better based off the feedback that you're getting directly from the source itself. And so I remember at I think it was TIA, that you have some really like great marketing ideas for the company, and so you were handing out a lot of the different badge holders. And so I
Yeah.
love that you do that. Do you typically have like, are you typically like doing stuff like that at conferences where it's almost like guerrilla marketing?
Somewhat. We try not to go too far with the guerrilla marketing, but yeah, we do. We try to be innovative. Obviously, when you're starting a company and it's smaller, you got to watch your budget as you're growing and things like that. And we also drive like our sales team and our customer support. I mean, we're all in. We love the industry. We love what we do. And we get out there and talk to people. So we talk to everybody. I always say, talk to everybody you can see, and say hello, say hi, anything that's opener, because you may have a conversation with that person in the future, and breaking the ice at a conference makes sense. So we do. We work hard and work long hours. I was always taught, a lot of times you got to work hard, long hours, and smart, and you can't just do 2 out of 3. So we do that, and being bootstrap, it's kind of in our DNA.
Heck yeah. And so when you have a conference coming up, because I know that you go to a lot of them, what does sort of your conference battle plan look like? On the previous show, we had talked to Shay Dixon, who she owns Scale Logistics, and she talks about how she goes into each conference with a clipboard, and she has like mapped out on the expo floor of who she's going to go talk to. Do you do anything like that, or you just kind of show up and shake hands and kiss babies?
We're probably, I would say, a little bit of both. We obviously try to be put together. Okay, who do we know that will be there and attending, and try to reach out to people ahead of time, and schedule some appointments. But we also like to be very hands on, like conversational, because we don't get it. We don't understand how every broker works, or 3PL works, or how shippers want information. We do a lot of listening. We try to talk, stand in the halls everywhere we can, having conversations, say, okay, what are you looking for? What would interest you? Because if, just because I think it's good doesn't mean everybody else thinks it's good. So I've got to go to the approach. Here's how we handle it. What would this be helpful for you? So we try to engage, ask a lot of questions. And then growing up in this industry for so many years, half the time, like I start off kind of talking a little bit about TextLocate, and by the time it's over, I'm talking about what's going on in their business and how things are going, and have made a lot of friends over the years. So we really just take it and we're very genuine. We have very direct conversations.
And you had mentioned earlier in the show about, your experience in procurement. You have the shirt on right now that says, or that has the little logo for Silver Fox, friend of the show, Grace Sharkey. I thought just affectionately called you that nickname, but that's actually your clothing line that you developed. So with your history in procurement, I guess that's a side of logistics that I don't know much about. So from explain it like I'm 5. How does procurement work, and then how did that help you launch, your other business, which you're obviously, it's a really cool looking shirt, it's a really cool looking logo. So tell us a little bit
Thanks.
about that part of the supply chain process.
Well, the Silver Fox came from a trucker handle. I got it at US Express from some younger guys, and I was just like, didn't want them to make fun of me, so I kind of owned it. But yeah, it's the procurement side was a piece. Really, I think about it, and some people, I know sometimes you may have tough days and you have made changes in company, and you're like, why is this occurring? But it's really what has helped me be successful, in my opinion, at TextLocate. Obviously, great people. But as far as like bringing things to market, it's a combination of all those experiences from finance, from tech, from business conversations that we've had for many many years, and those all build up, and you forget how useful they are when you're building a business. But grit and determination are to me the most important. To get that. But as far as procurement side, yeah, when I was doing handle procurement at Amazon, it definitely helped me like with an e-commerce kind of line and thinking about that. But it's just how you work with people. Be genuine, be upfront, be transparent about what you're doing with procurement. You're obviously, I was in Amazon and I was working, for on Amazon's behalf to get the best price, but the best price doesn't mean it's the best logical price, or just straight, hey, it's X amount per mile. It's about really what fits best. So I think that's what's important is have conversations around, okay, what can you offer? What price point works? But can you make the service work for the other person that's going to be buying it or consuming it, or you may be selling it to either way. And I think that approach dramatically helped me at Amazon is that it wasn't just like, I need this price. I needed to find a service provider that price was effective and was good for them, whether that be a backhaul or whatever it may be, or volume that they needed, things like that. So I think, again, it's extremely important to have conversations together and say, okay, what matches and what lines up? Because it does not always line up. And that the sooner you figure that out, the better for both sides and both parties.
It almost sounds a lot like procurement, sounds a lot like a carrier selection, like picking a good carrier. Like you
Similar,
get what you
yeah.
pay for with,
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
price point, but on the other side it could be a situation where like you just want your freight to get to the place where you said you were going to be. So it sounds a lot like that.
It does. Yeah, it's absolutely that way.
All right, so I got a few more questions for you. It's sort of like the rapid fire
Okay.
section of the site. But well, actually, first before I get to that part of the questions, but what tech solutions do you wish existed in freight?
What tech solution? So one that I think would be very beneficial for our industry, if there was a way to put more freight on a truck, on a trailer, because I think right now, if we could see trucks that are driving down the interstate, if I look out here at I-75, I bet if there was like this empty full meter, it would surprise us how much is available in there.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I think better products that optimize, from a sustainability perspective, but also just from a cost, all the different pieces that go in effect with that. A lot of that I think goes back to speed. Can we wait for the full trailer to get loaded before we need to move on to the next day waiting on orders? But I wish there was better products around that. Obviously, love the communication visibility space. I think it's grown immensely from the good old days. How you had a lot of fragmentation, but the one I would love to see is a full empty full meter on trucks and how we could improve that. Because again, that's a lot of hours for the drivers and tools that would make it easier for drivers. One thing that I always, really say, hey, I'd love to help be part of is letting drivers know as soon as schedules change, because oh, so many times drivers get to a delivery point and they find out, because it's sometimes the information gets delayed from the shipper to the 3PL or to the carrier, and then the driver finds out later that schedule change has occurred, and now they're in the back lot of a shipper and they don't have really good amenities and they're sitting there for an extra 3 or 4 hours. That is changes their lifestyle from being able to stop at a fuel stop and be able to take a shower, be able to get something to eat and gas up. That changes their whole perspective there, and it eats up the number of hours of service, because that's a challenge in our industry is all of those communication points that are important to make sure we're efficient and getting trucks in and out of facilities. Because I'm sure it's from what I've seen and experienced, it's tough as a driver to be sitting and waiting forever. I mean, none of us really like to wait, and we don't like to wait in traffic, but imagine having to set hours and hours just to unload your trailer.
And not get paid for it, which is, I
Yeah,
think,
a lot
nobody
of them
would
don't.
like. And
No.
so now, as we sort of, I guess one more question. Now that I'm thinking about it, what are your favorite tech solutions that are in freight, not your own?
Tech solutions not in freight that are not on. I really like the carrier compliance side of the business. I think is really unique with what's coming to market now with products like when you think of like RMIS and My Carrier Packet and Highway, I think those are important products in our industry for just making sure that, I mean, right now is such a, issue from fraud and like what Carrier Assure is doing and people like that. I think it's extremely important because fraud costs us way too much money. It costs a lot of hassle, and there's a lot of people going to work every day that are truck drivers, that are logistics professionals that are challenged with fraud today. And it's disappointing what's happening in our industry. And even now, there people are being so tricky in ways that even the carrier and the driver that hauled the freight and legitimately did that, it could be tricked between who was actually paying for the freight and who wasn't, and then those groups get money from the shipper, but then they don't pay the carriers, and that's just so disappointing and tough for the carriers out there and from the driver perspective. So sometimes drivers may not get compensated in those situations. Hopefully they do, and the carriers take care of it. But that's the fraud areas around fraud right now are the highest levels I've ever heard and seen in our industry. So areas that help improve that, I think, are really really strong.
I think that's
And,
kind
and
of
scheduling and payments, I think it's kind of like the date. Like if you just look at what makes everything a little bit easier for both the shipper, the carrier, and the driver, those are those things I really like.
and from the lens of just anytime new technology, I think, is introduced to an industry, you have the sort of fraudulent opportunity seekers that are going to try to game the system. And the truth is we need more better technology in order to combat those bad actors. And so I think with all the conversations that I have on this podcast, fraud is consistently been brought up more and more over the last few months. So yeah, you're right. It is interesting to see those companies, trying to tackle that big problem and just prevent it from even happening in the first place. So that these smaller
Yeah.
businesses, what is it, 90% of all trucking companies are 9 trucks or less. So that one fraudulent case can have a real impact on if that business is going to stay open or not. So thank you
Yeah.
for that point.
And even like tools like green screens, I think, when the bit like things that are gathering more data. Loop is a great technology out there to make it easier for reconciliation. I'm a finance guy by heart, so the payment sides I get excited about too, is because there's a lot of heavy lifting out there in the industry with back office. So anything that we can make that easier and more streamlined, because there's a lot of headaches there. So I like those areas too, and products that help with those the design from a software perspective.
Heck yeah. I mean, you definitely like shined a light on a lot of tools. I hadn't heard of Loop before, so I'm going to make a note to check them out afterwards. But you're right. There's it, with all of the technology going on in the space, like there are some good actors that are trying to combat, some of the bad actors out there. All right. I got a few last kind of
And
remaining
one
questions. Oh,
last
go
one,
ahead.
I got to throw it out there. I feel like I'm seeing really good progress from TMS systems. Really, some are really growing and developing that I think is really nice to see. That trying to make things like operationally easier, like connecting the dots more automated. That as well.
In what sense? Like connecting like what the next step
Less
process should
click,
be?
yeah, less clicks, like automated, like the next function, or hey, I knew this was going to occur, so since this happened, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Because typically, I started at US Express and it was AS400 green screen, so it was like old school. And some people were fantastic; they were like super fast. I mean, they could close their eyes and do transactions. They weren't even using the mouse with the green screens. But now with the technology and the pieces that we have, and like being more open to connect with products like ours, API and things like that. So you have these very specific niche players that you can connect and automate things like that. It's really making a day in the life of a logistics professional, and ultimately the shipper, gets better from that with better connectivity and things as well.
What about sort of to play the other argument side? There's a lot of folks who are really apprehensive to the automation, to the AI introduction into the logistics space. Do you see, I would imagine that you would see, I guess a future where both of those things can live together, where you use the human intelligence powered by AI and automation. But do you think any of those fears are I guess, maybe legitimate, or is this more a case of like too much technology?
I would say some fears could be, depending on how far it advances. But if you use some of that, some of the AI technology, I think it can be extremely handy where it can analyze information faster and response levels. Or again, how do you tee information up? But I still think it's similar. It's obviously much more advanced than this, but similar to when typewriters were replaced with computers. I think it's you're going to continue to evolve and use newer technology to make things easier. I'm not, I guess I don't fear that we're going to get all displaced out of work. But I do think there's a lot of technology that does make it a lot easier. Like I know personally I use Chat GPT at times because for me, I'm a finance guy, so I really like the numbers and that comes easy and I can build spreadsheets fast. But sitting down and like writing out 3 pages or whatever, if I can just kind of put some information in there and it helps quote, get me a draft or kind of get started, that helps. So again, tools that help you do things quicker and more effective, I think, is really good.
I completely agree. I was participating. There's a new like a sort of logistics tech group over on a Discord channel, and Discord is kind of like Reddit or some of these other
Right.
like online forums. I'm not sure if you're part of the Discord yet, but they were talking the just last night about AI adoption, and there were some folks in there that were really just worried that it was just going to take all of their jobs, and then you had another person that was talking about how all of these influencers are making money on TikTok and the different things that they're doing to make money. And I was like, guys, wake up. Like, none of these jobs or hardly any of these jobs that exist, what you're talking about right now, existed 10 years ago. So we're constantly evolving. And I think that these AI tools are just such a game changer for small teams, for small business owners, that you can work as the power of you can quadruple your impact as far as work is concerned, to get from a blank page to something that you can work with, which takes a lot of
Absolutely.
brain power for folks who are running a business.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, we use a lot of obviously modern tools, since we were founded 2 years ago. So everything we have is on the cloud. So the tools that I use, I mean, they do make it a lot easier than in the past. That's for
Oh,
sure.
all
So
right.
definitely.
I promised, I think 3 times now, is I promised to get to these rapid fire questions.
Sure.
So I got a couple for you before we let you go. First one's on the attention economy. How do you market your business versus your personal brand? And is there a difference?
It depends on the size company. For us, I was just talking about that yesterday. I probably blend it a little too much, but I think it's great. Use my background and industry to support the why. Why this is important. So I think it just depends on the size company. But over time, like even that has, as I've continued to grow and add additional headcount, I think that has changed dramatically because it's not just me on conversations with selling or customer support. So I don't want it to be only about like me. So I want it to be about the brand. And as they can, a lot of times with my sales guys, I'm like, this is an entrepreneurial business for you. You can go out, you can sell this product, you can build great relationships with this product around your brand and they have really started making, over the past year or so, like at the conference, making really good friends, and they'll call and follow up. And then customer service is extremely important about the actual company. So I think it depends on where you are and what stage that's important because you want to be tied together, but to some extent, as a founder, a little separation there too, because you don't want to get in the way of the rest of your team that's doing a really good job. Because TextLocate wouldn't be where it is today if it was just me only. It's a team sport that has gotten us here. So it's a good
Eh,
question.
Well said, because I think that's I struggle with it too. Like, how do I market my business versus myself? And right now I'm just like, they're just going to have to be blended for now, and then we'll
Yeah.
figure it out as we add more employees into the mix. But for now it's just going to be tied to me, and that's okay. So I
Yeah.
don't want to try to do too much. Do you have a favorite social media platform, and why?
Um, I like them all. It's funny that you mentioned that because years ago, when my kids were younger, I was like, I had this wild idea to go to a Facebook shareholders meeting. And my wife, I was like, hey, why don't you go with me? I bought Facebook like when it IPO'd and all this kind of stuff and had dropped. And she was like, why in the world would we go do that? But again, the finance guy, and I was like, I bet it would be cool. And let's go do it. We'll stay a long weekend in San Francisco. Ended up, it was at the end of my kids' school. So we ended up taking them with us. We went to a Facebook shareholders meeting. Literally Zuckerberg like 20 feet in front of me talking. I've got my kids lined up. They were
No
super
way.
nice. It was like going to a Southern company. Like they were very friendly, very like it ended up inviting us to go on campus. We ended up touring Facebook's campus, had pizza on site. So I'm a little biased because of the way they treated me with Facebook, and some of that's age, from my age, more of the Facebook side. But also, I really like Instagram. I like the fact that I can just kind of flip through pictures to keep up with friends and family and stuff like that. That's what's to me is kind of fun, is just to see kind of who's doing what's going on. So the picture makes it really nice.
And so you are, I imagine you have Zuckerberg's back in this whole like him versus Elon fight that
Oh,
they're
I don't
trying to
know who's
arrange.
going to do what, but it looks like he's been working out a lot. But it seems like that's starting to die down a little bit. But
Yeah,
um,
Zuckerberg definitely has been working out a ton and
yeah,
practicing like MMA fighting and
I
Brazilian
know.
jiu-jitsu and all of that. I really admire him for
Yeah.
stepping outside of, he seems like a human now. I think, there's
Hmm.
been so much, I guess, many jokes made about him when he goes in front of Congress, which I guess who wouldn't try to be a robot in front of, Congress
Yeah,
and things like that. But
exactly.
he's definitely revitalized, I think, his own personality, where you have folks now that are choosing to be on Threads and be on Instagram just because they hate Elon Musk so much. So
I
I think that
know.
whole dynamic is funny.
I um I respect both of them. I think they've done amazing things.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely it's interesting to watch just with popcorn on the
Yes, it
sideline.
is.
Okay, last couple questions. You've worked in a lot of different roles within supply chain. We mentioned procurement. We mentioned the asset based side. Now technology, of course, finance. Do you have a favorite sort of supply chain or like logistics factoid that you like to use, maybe with trivia or with your family members, anything like that?
Not really totally, but one that I think one comes top of mind that I did not. Obviously, I had no idea when I was starting very early on in my career at like U.S. Express, but learning about like we didn't have this when I started in 1999. It's not been that many years ago, but I was learning from the founder of U.S. Express, Max Fuller, and he was telling me about technology, and we visited Qualcomm. So you would hear Qualcomm and things like that, and people knew that from a cell phone perspective, but they were actually one of the big innovators early on in the communication side. And so even back in the what changed after deregulation and what helped somebody like US Express to really change the industry about scheduling. So used to it'd be like, hey, the driver will be there tomorrow. Then all of a sudden they were actually scheduled with the Qualcomms. They were doing two-way chat like you and I would via text or whatever back in the 80s, all
Oh
via
wow.
satellite with Qualcomm, and that was very innovative. That changed really how the industry would work. So you could actually meet a 4 hour scheduled window because you'd know the progress that truck's making and moving in the industry. So that's one that I think is I don't know. It's just fascinating to think how far back that was until early 2000s before like AOL Messenger and all that stuff came about. That they had that and working with drivers. Now maybe short code and short form, but they could give quick updates that way.
That's super interesting. I think that's my favorite one so far that somebody has mentioned on the show. All right, last question because I know you got to go, and or I got to go too because we both we're talking a little bit before, which always makes for a good podcast conversation, I think. So
Yes.
last one, favorite SaaS product besides ChatGPT and besides TextLocate.
Favorite SaaS product? Man, that's a tough one
Like
for
one
us.
you
But
can't live without.
one I can't look. Well, I already said I was a finance guy, so I really like QuickBooks. It's like I can do all my financial stuff, and it's all like rules built and do everything quick. But I would say if I don't think, I guess it's considered SaaS now. Obviously, we use
Yeah.
the Google products and love it, but I don't know. Maybe Excel. It's kind of SaaS these days.
That's such a finance answer.
I know it's
QuickBooks and
terrible, but I
Excel.
love it. But believe it or not, a lot of logistics people love Excel. I'm saying out there, if you're, see this and you can give a thumbs up. I mean, we live and die by it, like analyzing, loads and rates and all this kind of stuff. So.
I love it. That's such a perfect answer for both finance and logistics. So Ryan, great interview, great conversation. Where can folks, follow more of your work, schedule a demo with TextLocate, all that good stuff?
Yeah, just hit textlocate.com. We've got on there like a demo you can take a look at, 10-minute on a YouTube demo. We've got a little place you can click and book a meeting. You can obviously reach out to me, Ryan, RYAN, at textlocate.com. We're easy to find. Hit us on social media. We're out there.
But on Instagram, because that's where
Yeah,
Ryan is
you can
at.
hit me personally on Instagram too. You'll find me there.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much.
Plus LinkedIn. I almost
yeah.
forgot LinkedIn. Business side, it's great. I mean, it's so funny, like how many conversations I have on LinkedIn between Messenger and stuff. That it's pretty fantastic too. Obviously.
It's pretty remarkable to see the shift. We talked to, a little bit about Mark Zuckerberg shifting his PR experience. LinkedIn has done the same over the last few years as well.
They've done a great job. Yeah, in my opinion, they've done a great job. It's helped us scale our business. There's no doubt.
Me too. It's one of those things that right when, sort of COVID lockdown hit, I think that's where a lot of the networking that happened at conferences, it just moved to LinkedIn. And it's been an incredible journey to have those digital handshakes turn into, real life conversations, real life relationships. And so, yeah, well said. So thank you again.
Yeah. Thanks for the time. Really enjoyed it. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.